Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video tutorial, we are going to be 3D modeling and assembling this nightstand in SOLIDWORKS. So some of the parts are already given to you, but there are also some parts that we need to make. So I put a little PDF right here. If we click on this, it will open up this large PDF, and it will kind of take you through all of the stuff that we need for this project. So you can see on the first page of the drawing file, I have the exploded view with a parts list and kind of the assembly. And if you go right down through, I actually set up this PDF more or less like drawing directions than just a working drawing. So the working drawing of dimensioning and labeling all of the parts is much, much bigger than this. I only set this up in direction form, not all of the drawing forms for the different parts that I gave you. So the first two parts that we're going to have to draw here, as you can see, are the sides. So this is the left side, and then the right side says it's inserted a mirror part. So there's no dimensions. That is one of the newer topics here. It might be new for you, it might be a review, depending on if you did this before or not. So let's just start out by making a new part, and we're going to start drawing this. So we'll come over to SOLIDWORKS. I'm going to make a new part, and all of this is in inches, so make sure you're in IPS down here in the bottom right. We're going to sketch, and since this is a side piece, I'm not going to do the front or the top. I'm going to do it on the right plane, the right side. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily have where our origin is, so I'm just going to put it down in the corner somewhere, starting down here. So I'm going to get my line tool, just kind of draw up and over. And I'm going to draw the outside profile of this entire thing first, and then I'll come back and I'll do those cuts afterwards. I'll move, there's a little straight piece that goes straight up, and I'll move away, and I'll come back to this so I can turn it into a curve. Go straight across, move away, come back, go down so it's into a curve, straight down and back over. I'll zoom in and see if everything's good. Now I can see here that this is vertical for me, but if yours is not, you know, typically that one might not get projected as that. You might want to make it vertical. At all of these connection points, it needs to be tangent. So tangent here, tangent there, horizontal. This needs to be tangent, tangent, and make sure that this is vertical. Same thing with your other lines. Okay, so everything looks like it's pretty much good. But you can see this is probably going to stretch for you. This will probably go up or down. Mine does not because mine is coincident straight across. Mine was just projected like this. So again, yours is most likely probably going to do this. Okay, if it does, just click on that line, hold in shift and click on this line. You can make those collinear, or you could click on that line and the origin and make it coincident. Either way, you want these two bottom pieces to be even with one another. So let's go ahead and start to dimension this. And again, I'm doing the overall outside right now. Then I'll come back and I'll do all those cuts. Okay, if I come in down here, these little pieces, it says TYP and it says a radius of 1. So that means typically 1. Okay, so if you see both of them looking the same, they are the same. So I'll just select both of these and make them equal. And then the one tricky part here that's going to take a little bit to explain is why these feet are different sizes. So this front foot is 1.25 and the back foot is 2 inches. So after I have this modeled here, I'm going to take you through that PDF just a little bit more and kind of explain why that actually is. So from the bottom up to the top of this little cutout is 2. And right now I have this entire thing fully defined. So I'm going to pull that PDF back over here so you can see. So like I was saying, this little front foot is a little bit smaller than this. And if you do the math here, it's actually 3/4 of an inch, so 0.75 smaller. And the reason why is because we are just drawing the side piece right now. There is another board, this piece, number 6, that goes on front of this called the face frame. Those boards are 0.75 thick. So here's a good little view from the side. You can actually see with that board on the front of it, this 1.25 plus 0.75 thick, from the side profile, even though those are two different boards, this is 2 inches wide, and that back piece is also 2 inches wide. So right now this is built a little bit smaller, but down the road when everything's assembled, it will actually look like the same as this. All right, so we have our full piece. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude. And it doesn't really matter which way you extrude, but this is going to be 0.75. And now I'm going to make another sketch on the inside here. And now I'm going to do my cutouts. So I'll go up and get the rectangle tool, and we're going to just do the horizontal cutouts for right now. So these look like they stop right here, but I can tell you that this is going to go all the way over. So just take two rectangles and make them go all the way over. Now we can start to dimension this. So from the bottom up to the first line, it says it is 2.75. From the bottom to the next line, it has as 3.5, and it's a little confusing. I'm going to pull this back over here so you can see. You see a 3 next, but that 3 goes to this tiny little line right there. That's the back cutout, so we're going to come back to that. So then going from the bottom up to the next one, that's going to be 17.5. And from the bottom to the next line is going to be 18.25. Okay, so we're going to cut these in, and these get cut in half the thickness. So if we look at our top view, we can see there's a little zoomed in view of a detail, and it's half the thickness. So that's this dotted line here, and that's going to be 0.375. That's kind of hard to see. The 0.5 here is the upper line, which is the back piece, which we're going to come back and do again afterwards. So I'm going to hit the green check, and I'll make another sketch on this surface again. Now you probably could have done this all in the first one, but you know, it's just as easy to do it like this. So I'm going to go from there down into here. Don't lock it onto any line in here, just kind of stop somewhere in there. And we're going to dimension from the bottom up to that bottom line, and that's going to be your 3. Okay. Now if we look on that front view, it shows from here over to the blue line, it actually has a measurement of 10.625. 10.625. And that is going to be the back piece cutout. So we'll go to the Features tab and Cut. And this time we want this to be cut in a 1/2 inch, so 0.5. That's the one that I just showed you on the PDF. So if we look around here, you can see that's cut out a little bit more than all the rest. And it's got kind of like this funky cutout down here. Kind of like makes everything interlock a little bit. Okay, so that is our left side. So we're going to save this after we change the material. This material is going to be out of oak. So I'm going to right click and hit Edit Material. And you can search for it up here, or you can just scroll down to the wood folder, but oak. Now you noticed when I right clicked, I had that down here as one of my favorites. You can right click on this and hit add to favorites, because we're going to make a bunch of parts that are going to be oak, and that will be over there on your left. Hit apply and close. Apparently I didn't apply it. There we go. Okay, so there's my left side. So I'm going to save this, file, save as, and we'll name this left side. Okay, now to make the right side, we're going to stick with this part right here, and this is where we're going to kind of review / make something new. This is a little bit different. We want to actually have an exact mirrored piece of this. So a lot of you would think, all right, we'll put it in the assembly and mirror it across the plane. Well, when you do that, it's going to take this piece and put it in the front. That's a little bit confusing here, but we want to have all of the features mirrored, but we still want the front to look the same like this. So this is meant just for the situation like this. I'm going to select this inside wall, and I'm going to go up to Insert. And if we go down to the middle, you'll see Mirror Part. And you're not really inserting. It's kind of confusing of why that's there, but I don't know where else you'd put it. Maybe underneath Tools. But Insert Mirror Part. And there's a whole bunch of stuff over here. We just basically want the solid bodies. You don't need to worry about anything else here. We'll just hit the green check. Hit Yes. Okay, and it brings in a whole new part. And you notice this says left side mirrored, and it's default. Okay, and it is supposed to be oak. I don't know why it's this color. Maybe if we If we select oak again, maybe it'll do it. There you go. So mine maybe was just glitching out a little bit. So now I'm going to hit File, Save As, and I'm going to name this right side. And the nice thing is these two files are linked together because it is the left side mirror. So if I changed anything on the left, it would automatically change it here on the right. So I'll close out of both of those. I'm going to bring my PDF back here, and I'm going down to my next one. So this is going to be the top. The top's pretty much just a basic rectangle, except it has these kind of cutout sides, these routed sides, and there's a little cutout here in the back of the rectangle piece as well. So I'm going to make a new part. Once again, we'll make a sketch on the top plane because it is the top part. And you notice that there was a center part, and there was a note in there that says, use the center rectangle to mate the origin in the middle. So I'm going to use the center rectangle. And I just noticed on my PDF, I have a mistake. I have to mail the origin in the middle. It should say make here. Should say make. So I'm going to make that rectangle right off of the middle, and then I'll go ahead and dimension this. Well, for those of you who know me, spelling is not my strong suit. All right, and this one is 20.5 wide. Go ahead and extrude this. And if we look at the other picture, it says it's 0.75 thick. So I'm just going to come up for that. Now we need that route cut out all the way around. So it's not cut out on the back, it's just cut out these three sides. So to do that, we need two things. First, we need the profile, and then we also need a path. And we're going to sweep cut this along. So you can do it in either one, either order. I think doing the path first is a little bit easier so you can understand it. So I'm going to click on top here. I'm going to use my line tool and just kind of trace these three sides. Now you could use the convert entities and just kind of click the three sides. That's fine too. But I just want those three sides. Then I'll hit return up in the top right. So that is my path. I'm going to rotate around, and I'm going to make a sketch on this back. And because the picture kind of shows it curving this way, I'm going to draw over here on the right. You could draw on the left too, it really doesn't matter, but I'll draw it on the right so it matches the picture. So I'm going to start with my line tool. This is going to go over, come down. Make sure you don't click on the yellow dot. It's going to come down to here. Move my mouse away and then come back. And I'm going to try to curve up this way. And then back up. Okay. Go ahead and start to dimension this. It says this tiny little vertical line is a 1/16 of an inch, so 0.0625. 0.0625. The arc itself has a radius of 0.5. And that's pretty much all it has there. Well, this is underdefined, so how do we get this to be fixed up? We want this center point to be even with this, so we're going to make that horizontal. And we're going to make that center point even with this vertical line here. We're going to make those coincident. Basically, this needs to be a perfect quarter circle. Now, if yours is still underdefined, it's most likely because of this corner down here. You're going to want to make sure that this is tangent. So it's tangent from here to this line so that it blends in perfectly. But once that is fully defined here, we should be able to go over to the Features tab, and you see there's going to be Extrude Cut, Revolve Cut, but not Sweep Cut yet. So let's back out. Okay, now we can have Sweep Cut. So we backed out of our sketch, or returned from our sketch. We're going to hit Sweep Cut, and it's going to automatically pick Sketch 3 as the profile because that's the one we just drew. Okay, and then the path is going to be this top edge, and that's going to be Sketch 2. We'll hit the green check. So now that is followed on those three sides. All right, the last thing that we need to do is cut out the little rectangle here. And this rectangle is kind of hard to understand and explain, but it comes from the bottom up because you got to think this is the very top. So that cutout is for the back piece. So it's from the bottom up. You can also draw it on the back too. It doesn't really matter how you do this. So I'm going to kind of sketch just on the back here. I'm going to get my normal rectangle. I'll draw from the bottom edge over something like this. Okay, now we want this thing centered. So if I click on the bottom line and I hold in Shift, I should be able to click right on that midpoint there. And no, maybe not. All right, well, we'll come back to this part. So let's just dimension this. This is going to be 18 wide. And the height of this is going to be 0.5. All right. So let's move this off to the side. Let's see if we can do this a little bit better. All right, from the origin, we'll click the origin and then click this bottom line and we can hit midpoint. That's what I wanted to do. So it centers it. I think it was just kind of over top. Now we'll go to the features tab and extrude cut. And this is going to get cut in 0.375. Just half the thickness of the normal pieces of wood that we're using, 0.375. All right, so that's the cutout. So let's set this to oak. And we can save that as our top. All right, we can then close out of this. And if I bring that PDF back over here, we can now scroll down and see what's next. So now it looks like we are building what I would call the shell of this. So we're going to start a new assembly, and you can see it says front of assembly. So we've got kind of zoomed in pictures here. But basically, we are going to create that assembly of this. You can kind of see how that's all interlocked in there. And then down here it says making the middle shelf, making the bottom shelf. So those dimensions are also here. You could just draw these in part files, but I'm going to try to show you how to actually draw this in the assembly itself. So I'm going to pull this back over. Let's start a new assembly. And again, this is in inches, so sometimes your computer defaults to MMGS. Make sure that you're in IPS. And it's instantly going to ask you what parts do you want to bring in. And you'll see you have a lot of parts in here because I gave you a whole bunch of parts. So we want to bring in the left, the right, and the top. I'm just holding in Shift to select all those. Hit open. Kind of space these out. Okay, and now our left side, since that's alphabetical, is the first one that got brought in. That's going to be fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and mate, and I'm going to make the front of this even with the front of this, just so that thing doesn't move. And I'll just say top to top here as well, so it's the same height. Now I'll just bring this back out, space this out a little bit more. All right, now these pieces should fit right up against that. Okay, and really it doesn't fit up in, it's all based off of this back cutout. So I'm going to do in between the two first, green check, or rotate around. And now I'm just going to deal with these cutouts right here. So I'll do that inside wall of the cutout. It's supposed to be even with this inside wall. The green check, and we'll do the backs of them are going to be even. And that should make this slide forward right there perfectly even. So you can see it's a nice little corner cutout. So the spacing of the entire thing is all based off of that cut on the top. So do the same thing over here. So from here to here, should just bring that over. And it should all be lined up already because you did the fronts of the two side pieces. So if we look back, this thing should be fully defined, as you can kind of see down here. All right, so that's the shell of this. So now to make the inside pieces, the shelves of those, if I look back at the PDF, those shelves, we have a bottom shelf and a middle shelf. The middle shelf's the easiest one to draw, so let's just do that one first so you get the hang of it. This is just pretty much a rectangle, and that middle shelf goes up until the back of it. It does not kind of go through the piece. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So instead of insert component, I'm going to hit the drop down and hit new part. And it tells you to click on this surface. Now you can do that surface or the front. I think the front's going to be the easiest. So I'm going to click right here in the front, and it grays everything out because we're actually making a part file now in the assembly. So if I rotate around or I hit Control 8, that's going to take me to a normal view. I'm just going to use my rectangle tool, and I'm going to click from that corner down to this corner. That should be fully defined. Go to the Features tab and hit Extrude. And instead of putting in a measurement, what I can do is rotate around, and I'll change this from blind to up to surface, and I'll click back here on this surface. And it's going to extrude back until it hits. Now this is what I meant that it doesn't go through. There is a backboard here, so this is going to go right up against the backboard. The bottom, however, you're going to see something a little bit different. So for this part, we'll come over here and we'll change the material to oak as well. And if we just kind of right click on this, I think there's a rename part. That is going to be middle shelf. Okay. Now to get out of this part file, I'm going to hit return up on the top, and now I have a part file made. So the next thing here is going to be building the bottom shelf, and this is pretty much the same thing. So hit the drop down and hit new part. And instead of this time clicking on this surface, you see how that has that weird cutout here? I am going to click on that surface. And instead of tracing that entire weird cutout, I'm going to use convert entities and let it trace it. So I'll just click on that. I'll hit the green check and it automatically traced that entire thing. Now I'll hit extrude. And once again, I'll change this to up to surface. I'm going to rotate around. I'm going to click over here on the opposite side. And it's going to extrude all the way over until it hits. Now I'll hit the green check. Once again, we'll just change the material to oak. We will rename this part, and this is going to be your bottom shelf. You can hit return from part. And I don't know why that one says underdefined. Interesting. I'm going to hit rebuild and see if it fixes itself. There we go. So my computer is just glitching out a little bit. All right, so now I have my shelves in. So this is the part where I'm going to want to save. And you can hit yes or save all. And we're going to want to save in here as our nightstand. Okay. And you can say save without in context references. That's fine. So it says internal or external parts. That would mean, do you want it to create its own part files? If you do want your own part files, meaning like you were going to CNC this or something, you would hit external, but this is just an assembly on the computer. So we'll just save them inside the assembly. So internal is fine. Hit OK. All right, let's go back over to the PDF. And if we scroll down, we can see that the next thing that we're going to do is put on the back slats. And there are two different back slats. There's the end, and there's just the normal back slat itself. So we are going to be linear patterning here as well. So I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to rotate around to the back. I'm going to start over here in this corner. So I'm going to hit Insert Component. I'm going to find my back slat end, and I might as well bring in my normal back slat as well. So hold in Shift and bring in both. We'll kind of put these here. So that you can kind of see what the difference is. The end piece has this extra cut off, so it's just a flat piece. And then it's got like the little slat here so that these can overlap. So this piece itself, how it currently is, it's kind of oriented for it to go over this way. So maybe we'll just start on this side instead. You could rotate this around if you wanted, but it should just be pretty easy. So I'm just going to do on top of it, up underneath. If I zoom in up here, it's going to touch that piece. The green check. I'm going to do the side wall of it to where I want it to touch. That's going to be here. Green check. And then the back's going to be even. Back to back. So you see it kind of leaves that little lip right there so that the next slat can kind of go right up on top. So the nice thing here is I'll just do the outside of it to the outside. Green check. And if I move over, I can see that is going to line up perfect right down here. So I'll do the top up underneath, the same top, so it goes right up. Now this just wants to slide back and forth. So I'll just act like I'm putting glue in between. I'll go from there to here. If I hit the green check, you can see that's flat on the back. And when I rotate around, you can see it's flat here as well. Perfectly drawn. All right, now we're going to be linear patterning this across. So linear component pattern. And for the direction, we want to click on a line that's going this way. So it doesn't really matter which line, just click on an edge. You just need to be aware of the arrow. So the arrow is facing that way. We want to reverse that arrow. So I'm going to hit reverse. So it's facing this way. And then we don't need another direction. So we want a quantity of 5. And it says the spacing is 2.625. The components to pattern is going to be this one. And it's just going to pattern that and bring that right over. I got that measurement based off of the width of this entire thing. Okay, then I'm going to bring that piece over. So it says copy and mate the second backslat. So I'll just hold in control. I'm just going to drag out, and that's going to copy it. Now to rotate this one around, up underneath move component is rotate. So I'm just kind of rotate that thing around so that's facing the correct way, something like that. And I'll just go ahead and mate this in. So I'll do the top to up underneath where it's going to touch. Green check. I'll do this outside to this outside so it rotates it better for me. And then to kind of suck that thing down into place, I'll click here and here. Brings it right down into that spot. So now you have your back slats on. And you see how this kind of interlocks back here nice and neat. Right, that is the shell of the nightstand. So once again, I would go ahead and save this.
All right, coming back to our next portion of this, you will see that we are going to be adding what's called the face frame. That's the solid boards that get added onto the front. So there's one here, there's one on the opposite side that's going to get mirrored across, and then there's some horizontal face frames. As you can see, there's 1, 2, and 3. On the inside here, we're going to be putting some drawer guides in. All right, I'm going to pull this to the side, and I'm going to insert some components. So I'm going to be bringing in my face frame vertical and my face frame horizontal. Open. All right, so this is the vertical, that's the horizontal. So this piece just gets put right on front there. So this is pretty easy. So I'm going to get my mate tool and go from there around to here, to the back side. So basically they're just touching one another. Green check. Go underneath. Bottom of the foot to the bottom of the foot. Green check. And then outside to outside. Green check. So that's pretty easy, as you can kind of see. These boards, that's going to go right there. And this big gap is because this one's also going to come over here. So just go ahead and put this in a while. I'm going to make the top of this even with the top of this. And check. And go in between these two boards. As you can see, this board's kind of inside there. Once I do this last mate, it's going to pull it out. And check. Alright, I'm going to make 2 more copies of this. So I'll hold in control and I'll drag this out. Hold in control and drag it out again. Go ahead and do that exact same type of mate as before. You can do the top portion of it to the shelf. This inside wall to where it's going to touch. And then just bring it out by doing the outside walls. And the last one just goes up underneath. Okay, so in between and the outside of it. Pretty simple. All right, to mirror this thing across, we need to check the planes that we have. And our assembly itself does have planes, but we are going to be using the plane from the top. So if you see, the assembly itself has planes, but they're just kind of probably in random spots because we didn't even use those to do anything with it. But the top piece, when we made that, if you expand it, you'll see we made planes go right through the middle of it. So we're going to be using our right plane here to mirror this across. So I'll just select that right plane. So I expanded the top, I found my right plane of my top, I selected it, and we're going to go up and hit the drop down underneath mirror components, or linear component pattern, hit mirror components. And the component that we want to mirror is going to be this piece. Green check. Should just flip it right over there. Okay, now to put the inside pieces in here, which is the second portion of that, and that was your drawer guides. I'm going to insert component, find my drawer guide, open, bring that thing in. I'm going to mate underneath, right here up on top of the shelf, and check. I'll do this to the back side of this. Now it's going to be kind of hard there, but if you look underneath, it's just the back side of this foot right here. Green check. I'm going to use that same idea by doing this board. So you could either do that inside wall, this big inside wall, or you could obviously come underneath and do here. It's all the same thing. Just slide that thing over there. There's no need to kind of hide any parts or anything like that. You can do that if it makes it easier, but it's pretty simple to do this. Now, we also want this mirrored over. So you don't have to do an all new mirror. This is kind of the unique thing about this, is if we just go down here and we edit this mirror, we can just add that part to that mirror, even though it was inserted later on. You can see now the drawer guides are also kind of taken over there as well. So pulling back my PDF, let's see what we've got next. So next it says we are going to be making a separate assembly, and we're going to be doing the drawer. So it looks like you kind of make the box of it first. As you can kind of see here, it says step 1. You're going to be putting these on. You're going to be mirroring the different parts into it. Okay, and then the cabinet door. So it doesn't necessarily have the drawer front on here, but the drawer front is going to go onto that as well. So I'm going to start a new assembly. And you could just do this off to the side, but you're going to be constantly rotating around your nightstand itself. So that's why I have you just making a new assembly. So we're going to be bringing in all of the drawer pieces. So the drawer has a false front, okay, and then it also has some of these other ones. So this is front and back, that's what the FB means, and drawer sides. So I'm holding in control because I don't want the drawer guide. Control allows you to individually select, and the drawer bottom. We'll bring in the drawer front after this. So drawer bottom. This one is going to be the front and back, and this one should be the sides. Be relatively easy. We're just going to start out by mating the tops of the two outside pieces. Green check. And this thing we want it to actually rotate around. So I'm going to get the rotate button first. That's underneath move. I'll just kind of rotate this like this. And it might go crazy on you. That's fine. Okay, we're just going to rotate our screen around. And we want the outside here of the dovetails to go through and be even with the outside of the board. Do the same thing back here. So the outside to here. And check. Now this thing's kind of upside down, I get it. But we're going to go up inside of this hole. So the very top of it is going to touch the top of this. So that'll sit it back down. Check. Okay, now that can still slide all over the place. Now I can tell you that this board itself is actually going to be centered inside of here. So this is kind of a floating bottom. See how that's angled? So we're not going to add any extra mates or anything like that. For right now, what we're going to do is just try to make these walls parallel so this doesn't move on us or rotate anymore. So if I click here and I click this inside wall, we're not going to make them coincident. We're going to make them parallel to one another. so that this doesn't rotate or anything like that. I'm going to hit the green check. All right, now I'm going to pull up my directions and kind of look through and see if there's anything, because we have those. But what we didn't do is this. It says hide the sides, make 2 midplanes, and you're basically going to be mirroring across. Well, I can tell you that you don't even need to do that. My directions need to be updated here. And the reason why is because this bottom board actually has planes that go through the middle of it, as you can see. Okay, so when I drew this, I drew it with the center in the middle. So that means we can mirror across this plane. We don't have to make any new ones. So expand your bottom board and select either the front or the right, and it doesn't matter which one you do first. We're going to hit Mirror Components, and we're just going to mirror it across. So that one will get mirrored across. We'll select the opposite one, the front. This one. And it mirrored it. Now, it's all spaced out because these aren't touching. These aren't in the correct spot yet. When we go to mate these in, the outside boards, it will kind of suck everything in. Now, I noticed that if I just click here and here, it's going to yell at you. So it does want you to kind of bring this in first to where it needs to be. I guess it's not smart enough to kind of figure out that those just get drug in. So just kind of move those boards around so it's really close to where it needs to be. And then get your mate tool, and let's try this. So I'm going to click on the outsides here, and I'll make them coincident. And it doesn't look like it wants to do it. So what I've noticed is it doesn't even have a clue what mate alignment. So you might have to kind of switch your mate alignments back and forth, but we do want this first one here where they're both even like that. And hit the green check. Do the same thing over here. Again, you might have to click that mate alignment. Green check. And this now should be fully defined. Okay, and that bottom should be kind of put right in there as well. All right, let's go up here and save this as our drawer. If we look at the directions again, it doesn't have anything about the drawer front here, but later on, once we kind of assemble it, it does talk about the drawer front. So for now, let's just move on to the next part. The next part is kind of doing the door. And again, this is also in another assembly. Let's make a new assembly. And we can insert all the drawer pieces for there. So that is going to be the door panel, the door rail, and the door stile. Okay. So this has a whole bunch of intricate cuts, as you can kind of see. Got this nice weird route here, this piece, and then the other one is even stranger. Now, if you've ever taken any of our woodworking classes, when you make a raised panel cabinet like this, it actually does have these very, very odd cuts here. That's by doing a double route on it. Okay, so looking at this piece, you can kind of see here that this has this fancy outside, which matches the rest, and then this cut. This cutout is where that panel goes. So we might have to rotate this because it kind of got inserted in a little bit strange. Let's just rotate this up so that that cut is facing down. So we're going to get our mate tool, and this is similar to the drawer in the fact that like this would be like the drawer bottom, and these would be the different sides to it. Okay, so I'll just do kind of the top to the top. It goes up. This piece here is going to touch right around back to this piece. And we're just going to pull this out and then just put glue in between. So there's a flat wall there that this is going to touch. Just goes in between. Pretty simple, but it's a really cool connection. Alright, so the panel, I'll take the flat part of it, and I'm going to zoom in here to inside one of these cutouts and touch that flat piece where it's going to touch. Okay, green check. Okay. And this as well is probably going to float in there. So let's see if the panel has planes that run through it. So the panel also has planes that run through it. Okay, so you could mirror these across, but let's try this a different way. Let's select these two different parts, and let's try to make them a subassembly this time, just for something different. So let's right-click and hit Form New Subassembly. Notice both of those are highlighted. You need both highlighted. Yep, we'll hit Move. Okay, and now I'm going to hold in Control on my keyboard. I'm going to drag this in like this. And it copied those two mates. Now I'm going to rotate this around so that it's down like that. And I'll try to mate these in. Now I decided to do it this way because last time when we did the mirrors across, it did act a little funky. And I didn't really like that. So I'm trying to get away from that. So I'll do this flat part here and this flat part. So those are even. Just the front faces of it. This thing should be able to kind of just pull away. And just kind of put glue in between where they were touched. So that was a little bit easier. And now it just kind of is in there, but you can see the panel is a little bit crooked. This is a perfect opportunity to use the width mate. And to show you the reason why we're going to use that width mate, I just got my measurement tool here. And just to show you, the length of this cab 10.625, but the depth of it, so from that wall over to the other inside wall, is actually bigger than that. Okay, it is 10.75. Okay, 10.75. So there's a little bit of a gap there. You can't just suck it over. Now you could kind of do the math to get that centered, but this is the exact reason why they have the width mate. And it's the same way lengthwise too, just so you know. So instead of being on the standard tab, we're going to go over to the advanced tab, get the width mate, and what we'll do here is click the outside of the cabinet panel, or the door panel. So from here to here, SOLIDWORKS basically measures that. And even though we're trying to assemble it in that hole, these are the exact same parts. So we could technically just say, hey, we want it centered between the far outside here and the far outside here. And it will center it perfectly in there anyways. Green check. Okay, let's try that same thing again. Select our width mate, and we'll do it lengthwise. So the outside of the panel, both clicks, and then the outside of those pieces. And it centers it on perfect. So this thing should be fully defined. And it is. Alright, so we're going to save this as our door. If you get this warning, this is because we made a subassembly. You can just hit internal. We don't need those two parts as its own separate assembly file in your folder. So we'll just hit internal, hit OK. And let's go back to this part. So we kind of skipped a lot of those directions. We just kind of went through it. So now it looks like we are just ready to kind of put them all together. Close out, close out, come back to my original one. All right, let's insert, and we want our drawer assembly and our door assembly. So I'm holding in Control and selecting those two. Okay, so this one is going to be obviously centered inside of there. So let's do that same type of with mate again. To the advanced tab, we'll do the with mate. We'll go from this side to this side. Say from this opening to this opening. We want that thing centered. Okay. We can check. Now we'll just go back to the standard tab and we'll say the shelf here, and underneath, not the panel, but underneath here, just on one of these sides, we're going to make those even, because it technically would just sit in there. There's no drawer guides or anything. Those wooden pieces are called drawer guides, but that's just so the drawer doesn't wobble in there. As you can see, that's going to fit right in. Okay. Pull this back out. And I'm going to put my false front on now. False front, open. Bring that. We want this to touch the back here. Alright, now once again we can kind of use that with mate to get the left and right measurement of this. Go over to your advanced tab, select width. We'll do the outsides of the drawer. You want to zoom in so you know you're clicking on the right spot. We're going to do the flat part here of the drawer face. I'll measure all of that and center it. And now the up and down is a little bit different. It's not just going to be put on there with the mate or the with mate. So if you can kind of see from the very top, it's 0.75, and you can see this is much smaller. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because the drawer is touching down here, just basically due to gravity. But you can see there's a little gap right there. So for this to go shut and have a ½ inch overlap, which it normally does, that's how furniture works, the ½ inch overlap, you also have a ½ inch overlap up there as well. So you can't necessarily just center this on there. It won't line up correctly with the overlap. So you want to be on the standard tab. We're going to click here. Okay, and click the top, so it's almost making them flush, but this is going to be an offset distance. So 0.75. Notice I clicked on that box there to enable it, and we want it to go up. If yours is going down, then you want to click flip dimension, but it should go up for you. Green check. Alright, so now that should just kind of slide in or out for you. Now to put a little constraint on this so that it doesn't slide through, it doesn't go all the way through the body like this, let's see if we can add something extra to it. So instead of the standard tab, if you go over to the advanced tab and we click this button right here, so I'm going to click on that limit distance, and we want the limit to be 0. The total distance that we want it to be able to pull out is going to be 12, and I know that because the drawer is actually only 11 long, so once it's out 12 inches, it is going to just come out freely, so that would be fine. And the lowest distance, or the minimum distance, is going to be 0 as well. Okay, so the parts that we want are going to be our face frame and the back of the false front, because that's the part that's going to touch. Okay, we'll hit the green check. And just to kind of see if this works, get off your mate tool. We should be able to pull this out 12 inches, but no longer than that, or no more, and it should only be able to go in so far until it hits. Okay, so it's got a little bit of a limit movement to it. I'm going to push that all the way in for now. Alright, now let's look down here at the cabinet door and go back to our settings. So, or our PDF. We have some offsets here as well, and then it says note only mate the edge line to here. So this is going to be hinging back and forth on there. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back over and just kind of look. And we want this to be on here like this, with a ½ inch up and a ½ inch over, and it's going to hinge on this edge. So I like to move this somewhat close to it, so I know that I'm actually clicking on the correct edges. And when I hit mate, some of you probably have seen over here on the advanced tab or the mechanical tab where we were earlier, that there is a hinge actually mate, like a hinge mate. But when you click on that, you see it says concentric selections and then coincident selections. So a hinge technically has this little barrel right here, this round part in the middle. That's what the concentric selections are. So we're not going to be able to hinge this in the way that you want using that hinge mate. So we're just going to do it in kind of a cheap way. We're going to do this flat face here. We're going to make that touch just this little line here, that edge. Hit the green check. So that's going to kind of be like flapping on there, basically. It can kind of rotate in or out. Now we'll do some of the offsets. So I'll do the top of my door, up underneath. And you see it moved it up. That's key. So it moved it up. So we're going to make sure that this is a 1/2 inch. So that means the door originally was down, okay, before we moved it up. So it's going to default to it going down. We want to flip this dimension so that it goes up above. Okay, and that's a 1/2 inch. Green check. Then we're going to do the same thing over here. Now this is the kind of sketchy part. So we're going to have to zoom in. You don't want this flat face. You want that line again, that little edge that's touching. So it's hard to kind of click that if you have your door open too much. Rotate around and click this piece here. And instead of them being even, we once again want to put a 1/2 inch. And you notice this time we didn't have to hit flip because it's already going in the correct direction. And now that door will just kind of flop and hinge open a little bit. So let's see if we can add kind of a limit to this, like an angle limit. Like I said before, this door technically would not be touching right here. It would be out. So when I look around, you know, if I swing this open too much, you see how it's kind of pinching and going in there. So just for the sake of this being somewhat realistic on the computer, we can only really open this door 90 degrees so that this is flat up against the back. Okay. So let's go up to the mate. And not on our standard tab, we're going to go over to our advanced tab. And instead of selecting this one, which is a distance, we want the limit angle. Okay, so for the maximum amount of open that we want, it's going to be 90. So that means the greatest distance will be 90. The minimum distance is going to be 0. Okay, and we want our cabinet door. And I'm just going to select this face frame just so it kind of makes sense for us. When this goes shut, it's going to go to here. Okay, now you see mine kind of flipped the wrong way. So I'm going to turn flip dimension off. I don't want that. So now it brings it kind of back the correct way. And as far as our alignment goes, I think if we have it this way, it's going to make them both on the same side, as you can kind of see that picture. We want them on the opposite side, so we'll do the anti-align. We'll flip it. Now the funny thing is, now that we flipped the alignment, you notice we also need to go back and check the box for flip dimension again so it actually comes out. So we want this out like this. It's a lot of flipping back and forth, I apologize here. But when we hit the green check and then get off of your mate tool, now this can't go to the left anymore. It's kind of stopped there, but this will be able to hinge in and only hit right there. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is put our knobs on here. One knob there, one knob here. So let's go up to Insert, and let's find our knob. There's a really cool tool for this one. It's going to be the Profile Mate. So most of you would try to mate the back of this flat part here, to this part, okay? And then try to do some measurements and center and all of that with maybe planes and everything. This one tiny tool does all of that. So if we go over to the mates and go to the advanced, this is the profile center. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select the circled edge of this and the drawer front, and it does all of that all at once. It finds the center of that rectangle, and it also kind of puts a coincident mate in between. Now, you can also lock its rotation so it doesn't move while we're here. We can hit the green check. So now if you look, that thing can't move up or down, it can't rotate, it can only pull in or out with that drawer. Awesome tool. Now I'm going to hold in Control and drag this out to do that. Now this would probably be centered on here or probably up a little bit more because it is a nightstand. So just for time's sake here, we're just going to put it centered on here. Same practice as before. If you want to, you could probably kind of make this more like up in here, because it is a nightstand, it probably would be higher. But I'm just going to do the profile one just to be done. Profile center, zoom in. So now we have our cabinet with limit mates and distant mates.